Captain Zexai clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as he watched the unconscious human being dragged into the holding cell. The creature was larger than most humans they had captured before, with broad shoulders and scars covering his arms and face. His dark hair was streaked with gray and even unconscious. There was something unsettling about his presence. Another one for the fighting pits? Zexai muttered to his second-in-command, a reptilian Sorok named Vesh. The crowds love watching humans fight. They're so unpredictable, so violent. This one looks like he'll put up a good show before he dies. The Krillian Empire had been capturing humans for their gladiatorial games for over 3 Earth years now. Humans were considered a primitive species, barely past their Stone Age according to Krillian standards. But they had one quality that made them valuable. They fought with a desperation and creativity that entertained the galaxy's most powerful beings. Vesh examined the human through the energy bars of the cell. This one is different, Captain. Look at those scars. They're not random. They're precise, surgical. And see how his muscles are developed? This isn't some farmer or merchant we picked up. Zexai waved dismissively. They're all warriors in their own minds. Vesh. Every human thinks they're some great fighter until they face a Krillian berserker or a molten stone beast. This one will scream and die just like the others. The ship hummed around them as it traveled through hyperspace toward the Krillian homeworld of Nexus Prime. In the cargo hold below, 30 other humans sat in similar cells, most of them terrified and crying. They had been snatched from various human colonies and outposts across the Outer Rim territories. The Krillian Empire didn't bother with populated worlds yet. Humans were still too primitive to pose any real threat, and taking a few from remote locations kept their activities hidden from the larger galactic community. As Zexai was about to leave, the humans' eyes opened. They were pale blue, almost gray, and they held none of the fear that usually filled captured humans' faces. Instead, they were calculating, studying everything around him with the precision of a predator, analyzing its environment. "You're awake," Zexai said in the universal translator language. "Don't bother trying to escape. These energy bars will kill you if you touch them, and even if you somehow got out, where would you go? We're in hyperspace, days away from any system." The human sat up slowly, his movements controlled and deliberate. He looked at his hands, then at the cell, then finally at Zexai. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost conversational. "What's your name?" The question caught Zexai off guard. Most humans begged or threatened when they first woke up. This one sounded like he was making casual conversation at a social gathering. "I am Captain Zexai of the Krillian battlecruiser Domination. You are now property of the Krillian Empire, destined for the fighting pits of Nexus Prime. What you should be asking is how many days you'll survive, not my name." The human nodded thoughtfully. "Zexai. Good to know." He stood up, and even though he was shorter than the 8-foot Krillian, something about his presence made the cell seem smaller. "I'm curious about something. How many humans have you captured?" "Hundreds," Zexai said proudly. "I've been running these collection missions for 2 years. The Empire pays well for quality fighters, and humans, despite being primitive, put on excellent shows. Hundreds." The human repeated the word like he was filing it away. "And how many ships like this one does your Empire have running these operations?" Vesh stepped closer to the cell. "Why do you ask so many questions, human? You should be cowering in fear." The human looked at Vesh with those same calculating eyes. "Fear is a tool, not a state of being. Right now I'm gathering information. It's what I do." He walked to the far end of the cell and examined the energy barrier closely, not touching it but studying its structure. "These are standard Krillian containment fields. 7th generation, if I'm not mistaken. Effective against most species, but they have a weakness in their power distribution grid." Zexai felt a chill run down his spine. No primitive human should know about Krillian technology classifications, let alone identify specific generations of containment systems. "Who are you?" The human turned back to face them, and for the first time he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the kind of smile a shark might wear if sharks could smile. "My name is Marcus Reed. Most people who know that name call me by my nickname." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "They call me Reaper." Vesh laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Reaper? What kind of ridiculous human name is that? Are you supposed to scare us with your primitive superstitions?" But Zexai wasn't laughing. Something about the way the human had said the name. The confidence in his voice, the complete lack of fear in his eyes, made him think of old intelligence reports he had read. Whispered stories from the Outer Rim about humans who were different, humans who had been changed by something the reports called the program. Vesh, Zexai said slowly. Run a genetic scan on this human. Full spectrum, now. Captain, that's unnecessary. It's just another, now. Zexai's voice cracked like a whip. As Vesh reluctantly activated the scanning equipment, Marcus Reed sat back down in his cell, looking perfectly comfortable. He closed his eyes and appeared to be resting, but Zexai could see the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his hands rested in positions that would allow him to move quickly if needed. The scan results appeared on Vesh's datapad, and the Saurok's face went pale. Captain, he whispered, these readings can't be right. According to this, the human has genetic modifications I've never seen before. His bone density is 3 times normal, his muscle fiber composition is completely altered, and there are neural implants throughout his brainstem. Zexai felt his stomach drop. What else? There's something else, Captain. The computer is flagging his genetic signature. It's running a cross-reference against Imperial intelligence databases. Vesh looked up, his eyes wide with something approaching panic. Sir, we need to contact command immediately. If this scan is accurate, we haven't captured just any human. Marcus Reed opened his eyes and looked directly at Zexai. His smile had gotten wider, and there was something predatory about it that made the Krillian captain want to step away from the cell. Still want to know who I am, Captain? Marcus asked softly. The command deck of the Domination fell silent as Admiral Thexvor's image appeared on the main communication screen. The massive Krillian's 4 eyes narrowed as he processed Vesh's report, his armored hide shifting from blue to deep purple, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. You're telling me, the Admiral said slowly, that you have captured a human with military-grade genetic modifications, neural implants, and a genetic signature that matches Imperial intelligence files. Yes, Admiral, Captain Zexai replied, trying to keep the nervousness out of his voice. The scan results are conclusive. This human is not like the others we've collected. Admiral Thexvor was quiet for several long moments, consulting something off-screen. When he looked back, his expression had changed from agitation to something approaching fear. Captain, you need to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. 27 years ago, the Terran Federation began a black project codenamed Seraphim. They took their best soldiers, their most dangerous individuals, and transformed them into something that shouldn't exist. Zexai felt his blood chill. The Terran Federation wasn't supposed to be advanced enough for genetic modification programs. According to all intelligence reports, humans were barely capable of interplanetary travel, let alone military enhancement projects. What kind of transformations, Admiral? Vesh asked. Enhanced bone density, reinforced muscle fibers, accelerated healing, improved reflexes, and most importantly, tactical neural implants that allow them to process combat scenarios at superhuman speeds. The Admiral's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They called these enhanced soldiers Reapers, and they were designed for one purpose, killing things that couldn't normally be killed. Down in the holding cells, Marcus Reed sat with his back against the wall, listening to every word through the ship's communication system. His neural implants had hacked into the Krillian network within minutes of awakening, giving him access to everything from ship schematics to personnel files. The aliens had made a critical error in assuming human technology was primitive. They had never bothered to upgrade their cybersecurity against human intrusion methods. The program was discontinued, Admiral Thexivor continued, because the subjects became too dangerous to control. Most were presumed dead or lost in deep space missions. If you really have one of them in custody, what are your orders, Admiral? Zexai asked. Kill it. Immediately. Don't wait, don't hesitate, don't try to profit from it. Activate the cell's disintegration protocol and eliminate the threat before... The communication suddenly cut to static. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the ship as multiple system failures cascaded through the Domination's networks. In the space of 30 seconds, navigation went offline. Weapons systems locked down and artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. What's happening? Zexai demanded as his crew scrambled at their stations. System-wide cybernetic attack, Captain, his chief technical officer reported. Someone is in our network and they're dismantling our operational capacity piece by piece. Vesh looked down at his datapad, which was now displaying a simple message in English. "Hello, Admiral. Thanks for the introduction. Reaper." In his cell, Marcus stood up and walked to the energy barrier. The modifications to his body included specialized biotechnology that could interface directly with electronic systems through electromagnetic field manipulation. It was the ability that the Krillian Empire, with their reliance on energy-based containment systems, was completely unprepared for. He placed his hand near the barrier, not touching it but close enough for his implants to analyze its power signature. Within seconds, he had mapped the entire containment grid and identified 17 different ways to overload it. He chose the subtlest one. The energy barrier flickered and died without any alarms or warning lights. Marcus stepped out of his cell and began walking down the corridor toward the other human prisoners. Behind him, automated systems began reactivating the barrier, but by then it was too late. "Sound the alarm," HFY screamed over the ship's communication system. "All security teams to the holding bay. The enhanced human has escaped containment." Marcus reached the first cell containing terrified human colonists. A middle-aged woman pressed herself against the far wall as he approached. "Please," she whispered, "don't hurt us." "I'm not here to hurt you," Marcus said calmly, placing his hand near her cell's barrier. "I'm here to get you home." The energy field dissolved instantly. "Stay calm, follow my instructions exactly, and you'll see your families again." As he moved from cell to cell, freeing the captured humans, Marcus's enhanced hearing picked up the sounds of Krillian security forces moving through the ship toward his location. According to the ship schematics he had downloaded, they would arrive in approximately 4 minutes and 20 seconds. "Listen carefully," he told the freed humans, who now numbered 31, including himself. "This ship has taken hundreds of our people to be killed for alien entertainment. The beings who captured you see humans as primitive animals. They're about to learn exactly how wrong they are." An elderly man stepped forward. "Are you really one of those enhanced soldiers?" "A Reaper?" Marcus looked at him for a moment before nodding. "Yes, and right now that's the best news you've heard in a very long time." He walked to a maintenance panel and began rapidly inputting commands. "I need all of you to get to the cargo bay. There are emergency pods there. When I give the signal, you launch toward that asteroid belt we passed an hour ago. A human rescue ship will pick you up within 6 hours. What about you?" the woman from the first cell asked. Marcus's smile was cold and predatory. "I'm going to have a conversation with Captain HFY about the proper treatment of human beings." He paused. "It's going to be a very educational conversation." The sound of armored boots echoed through the corridors as Krillian security forces approached. Marcus handed the elderly man a datapad containing the ship's layout. "Cargo bay is down 2 levels, section 7. Move quickly and quietly. Don't look back no matter what you hear." As the humans hurried away, Marcus walked back toward the center of the ship. His neural implants were analyzing every aspect of the Krillian vessel, from structural weak points to crew locations. The Domination carried a complement of 200 Krillian soldiers, each one larger and stronger than an unenhanced human. Under normal circumstances, those would be overwhelming odds. But these weren't normal circumstances, and Marcus Reed wasn't a normal human. The first security team rounded the corner just as Marcus reached the main corridor junction. 6 Krillian soldiers in full combat armor, carrying plasma rifles designed to kill armored vehicles. "Surrender, human," the squad leader commanded. "You cannot escape this vessel." Marcus stood in the center of the corridor, hands at his sides, looking completely relaxed despite facing 6 armed soldiers. "You know what?" he said conversationally. "You're absolutely right. I can't escape this vessel." His smile widened. "Good thing I don't want to." The squad leader was reaching for his communicator to report the human's surrender when Marcus moved. The enhanced reflexes and speed that had been built into his modified nervous system turned him into a blur of motion that the Krillian soldiers couldn't track. The sound of the brief, one-sided fight echoed through the ship's corridors. When it was over, Marcus was walking toward the command deck, and 6 Krillian soldiers would never be reporting to anyone again. The command deck of the Domination had become a scene of controlled chaos. Captain HFY watched in growing horror as security camera feeds showed his soldiers falling one by one to the escaped human. The creature moved through his ship like a force of nature, using the vessel's own structure and systems against his crews. "How many teams have we lost?" he asked Vesh, though he was afraid to hear the answer. 12 security squads, Captain. 72 soldiers. Vesh's voice was hollow with disbelief. The human isn't just fighting them. He's hunting them. Look at this. The main screen displayed footage from security cameras throughout the ship. Marcus Reed appeared to be everywhere at once, using maintenance shafts, ventilation systems, and service corridors to appear behind Krillian forces who thought they had him cornered. In one clip, he dropped from a ceiling vent onto a squad of soldiers moving faster than the cameras could clearly track. In another, he used a plasma rifle torn from a fallen soldier to destroy a bulkhead, sucking 3 more Krillians into space through the breach. He's not trying to escape, Zexhai realized with growing dread. He's systematically eliminating our combat capability. Marcus had reached engineering, where Chief Engineer Korzik was desperately trying to regain control of the ship's systems. The massive Krillian, easily 9 feet tall and weighing over 800 pounds, turned as Marcus entered through a service hatch. "You!" Korzik growled, raising a plasma cutter that could slice through battleship armor.
"I'll end this myself."
Marcus studied the engineering chief with the same calm expression he had worn since awakening. "Tell me something," he said, seemingly unconcerned about the weapon pointed at him. "In all your intelligence reports about humans, did anyone mention that we're problem solvers?" Korzik fired the plasma cutter, but Marcus had already moved. The beam scorched the wall where he had been standing a microsecond before. The human was now behind the engineer, and Korzik spun around with surprising speed for something so large. "We see a problem," Marcus continued conversationally, dodging another plasma beam with impossible precision, "and we find creative solutions." He grabbed a wrench from a maintenance kit and hurled it with inhuman accuracy. The tool struck the plasma cutter's power cell, causing it to explode in Korzik's hands. The engineer stumbled backward, his hands burned but not seriously injured. Marcus approached him slowly. "Your people have been stealing humans for gladiatorial games. That's a problem." He picked up a datapad from the engineer's workstation and began rapidly entering commands. "So I'm going to solve it. What are you doing to my ship?" Korzik demanded, watching helplessly as systems throughout the domination began shutting down. "I'm reprogramming your hyperspace navigation system," Marcus replied without looking up from the datapad. "Instead of heading to Nexus Prime, you're now going to make a little detour. Specifically to the Sol system." Korzik's eyes went wide with terror. Sol system was the human homeworld, heavily defended and off-limits to all alien vessels by galactic treaty. "You're insane. If we arrive in Sol space, the Terran Defense Force will destroy us." Marcus finished his programming and looked up at the engineer. "Not if you surrender immediately and provide them with a full confession about your slave-gathering operations." He smiled, that predatory smile again. "Of course, that's assuming any of you live long enough to surrender." On the command deck, alarms were blaring as the ship's course change became apparent. "Captain," the navigation officer called out, "hyperspace trajectory has been altered. We're heading directly for the Sol system. Override it," Zexhai commanded. "I can't, sir. The entire navigation network has been locked out with administrative protocols I've never seen before." Vesh looked up from his tactical display. "Captain, we've lost contact with all security teams. The human has reached the armory level." The security cameras showed Marcus walking through the ship's primary weapons storage facility like he owned it. He moved from rack to rack, selecting specific items with the expertise of someone intimately familiar with military hardware. He strapped on Krillian combat armor that had been sized for smaller species, loaded himself with enough firepower to level a city block, and then did something that made every Krillian on the command deck question their understanding of reality. He began placing explosive charges throughout the armory with the precision of an expert saboteur. But instead of setting them to detonate immediately, he was creating a complex network of timed explosives that would turn the entire weapons deck into a controlled demolition system. "He's going to blow up the armory," the tactical officer reported needlessly, as they could all see Marcus's work on the monitors. "That will cripple our combat capability," Vesh said. "Without those weapons, we're defenseless." "No," Zexhai corrected grimly. "Look at the way he's placing those charges. He's not trying to destroy the armory. He's turning it into a massive shaped charge aimed at our engine core." The realization hit them all simultaneously. If Marcus detonated those explosives, the blast would be directed through the ship's structure directly into the main power plant. The resulting explosion would tear the domination apart from the inside out. "He's not trying to escape," Vesh whispered. He's going to destroy the entire ship with himself on it. Marcus finished placing the last explosive charge and stood in the center of the armory, looking directly up at the security camera. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the ship's communication system. Captain HFY, I believe you wanted to have a conversation with me. I'm currently in your armory, surrounded by enough explosives to turn this ship into cosmic dust. I suggest you and your senior officers join me here for a discussion about the future of Krillian-human relations. On the command deck, HFY stared at the screen in fascination and terror. He's completely insane. No, Captain, Vesh said quietly. He's completely in control. Look at his vital signs. The Sarok indicated his medical scanner, which was monitoring Marcus through the security system. His heart rate is steady, his breathing is normal, and his brain patterns show no signs of stress or emotional instability. This isn't the behavior of someone who has lost his mind. This is the behavior of someone who knows exactly what he's doing. Marcus's voice came through the communication system again. Oh, and Captain, you might want to hurry. I've set these explosives on a timer, and I'm afraid I'm the only one who knows the deactivation code. There was a pause. Of course, even if you kill me, the timer will still count down. So really, your only option is to listen to what I have to say. HFY looked around his command deck at the faces of his remaining crew. 3 hours ago, they had been smugly confident about delivering another cargo of primitive humans to the fighting pits. Now they were trapped on a ship that was heading toward the most heavily defended system in human space, with a creature aboard who had single-handedly eliminated nearly half their military complement and was threatening to destroy them all. Sir, the communications officer said nervously. What are your orders? HFY looked at the security monitor showing Marcus Reed standing calmly among enough explosives to destroy a space station. The human was checking the time on a chronometer strapped to his wrist as if he had somewhere else to be. Prepare a security escort, HFY said finally. We're going to have that conversation. As they prepared to leave the safety of the command deck, none of the Krillians noticed the small smile that crossed Marcus's face. According to his calculations, the rescued human prisoners should have reached the asteroid belt by now, where they would be safely recovered by Terran ships. The Domination's course change toward Sol system had been transmitted to human military networks through a coded signal embedded in the ship's navigation broadcasts. And most importantly, the explosive charges he had placed throughout the armory weren't actually connected to any detonators. Marcus Reed was many things, but wasteful wasn't one of them. The ship and its crew were far more valuable as intelligence assets than as debris. The armory fell silent as Captain HFY, Vesh, and 6 heavily armed Krillian guards entered the chamber. Marcus Reed stood exactly where the security cameras had shown him, surrounded by enough military hardware to outfit a small army, and what appeared to be a complex network of explosive devices. You wanted to talk, HFY said, his voice carefully controlled. Here we are. Marcus turned to face them, and HFY was struck again by how utterly calm the human appeared. There was no signs of stress, no indication that he considered himself to be in a desperate situation. If anything, he looked like someone who was finally where he wanted to be. Thank you for coming, Captain. Before we begin, I should probably introduce myself properly. Marcus gestured to a cargo crate and sat down casually, as if they were having a meeting in a conference room rather than standing in a room full of explosives. My name is Marcus Reed, serial number TSF-7743 Delta, formerly of the Terran Special Forces, specifically the unit that doesn't officially exist. The Seraphim program, Vesh said quietly. Very good. Yes, the Seraphim program, though we prefer to call ourselves something else. Marcus smiled. We call ourselves problem solvers. HFY felt a chill run down his spine. How many of you are there? That's classified information, Captain. But I can tell you that there are enough of us, and we've been very busy over the past few years. Marcus stood up and began walking slowly around the room, his movements making the Krillian guards nervous. You see, your Empire's little slave-gathering operation hasn't gone unnoticed. We know about the collection ships, the fighting pits, the entertainment complexes where humans die for alien amusement. The galactic community accepts these activities, HFY said defensively. Humans are classified as a primitive species. The treaties, Marcus interrupted, were negotiated by people who believed that humanity was isolated to a handful of colony worlds with limited technology and no military capability. His eyes grew cold. Those treaties are about to become very obsolete. Vesh stepped forward. What do you mean? Marcus walked to one of the weapon racks and picked up a Krillian plasma rifle, examining it with professional interest. Tell me, Vesh, what do you know about human military doctrine? You're a primitive species, Vesh replied uncertainly. Limited space travel, no energy weapons, barely capable of defending your own colonies. That's what we wanted you to think. Marcus set the rifle back in its rack. The truth is, humanity has been preparing for contact with hostile alien species for over 30 years. The colonies you've been raiding? They're bait. The primitive technology you've observed? It's a facade. The lack of military response to your attacks? We've been gathering intelligence. The implications of what Marcus was saying began to sink in for the Krillian officers. You mean, HFY started. I mean that every ship you've sent into human space, every colony you've raided, every person you've captured has been carefully monitored and cataloged by Terran intelligence. Marcus's smile was genuinely terrifying now. We know the location of every Krillian military installation, every supply route, every political leader, and every weakness in your empire's structure. That's impossible, Vesh protested. Our security protocols are designed to stop alien technology, not human ingenuity. Marcus tapped his temple where his neural implants were located. You never bothered to upgrade your cybersecurity against human intrusion methods because you assumed we were too primitive to pose a threat. That was a mistake. One of the guards raised his weapon slightly, but Marcus continued speaking as if he hadn't noticed. Right now, as we speak, there are 47 Reaper units operating throughout Krillian space. They're not there to gather intelligence anymore, Captain. The intelligence gathering phase ended 3 months ago. What are they there for? HFY asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. They're there to solve the problem of alien species who think humans are easy prey. Marcus walked back to where he had been sitting. In approximately 6 hours, every major Krillian military installation will experience simultaneous system failures, equipment malfunctions, and what your historians will probably record as a series of very unfortunate accidents. The armory fell completely silent except for the hum of the ship's life support systems. HFY felt his world shifting beneath his feet as he realized the scope of what Marcus was describing. You're talking about destroying our entire military infrastructure. Not destroying, Marcus corrected. Neutralizing. There's a difference. Destruction implies we want to hurt your people unnecessarily. Neutralization means we want to remove your ability to threaten ours. He looked directly at HFY. Your empire will survive this, Captain. But your empire's practice of treating humans as slaves will not. Vesh's tactical mind was working through the implications. If you have this kind of capability, why reveal it to us now? Why not simply carry out your operation in secret? Because, Marcus said, every problem has multiple possible solutions and some solutions are better than others. He gestured around the room. I could have destroyed this ship and everyone on it. That would have solved the immediate problem of your slave-gathering operation, but it wouldn't have addressed the larger issue. What larger issue? HFY asked. Marcus stood up again, and this time his expression was serious rather than predatory. The issue is that your species and mine are going to have to coexist in this galaxy, whether we like it or not. The question is whether that coexistence is going to be based on mutual respect or mutual fear. He walked to the control panel for the explosive charges and began entering commands. Right now, your government believes that humans are weak and easily exploited. In 6 hours, they're going to learn that we're not. The question is, what are they going to do with that information? What do you want from us? HFY asked. I want you to deliver a message to your government, Marcus replied, continuing to work at the control panel. The message is very simple. The Terran Federation is no longer content to pretend that we're a primitive species hiding in the outer rim. We're here, we're capable, and we're done being anyone's entertainment. The explosive charges around the room began powering down, their indicator lights shifting from red to green. Marcus finished his work and turned back to the Krillian officers. I've deactivated all the charges. This conversation didn't require martyrdom after all. You were bluffing, Vesh realized. The explosives were never connected to actual detonators. Never bluff with something you're not prepared to follow through on, Marcus corrected. The explosives were real and they were armed. I just chose not to use them because this conversation was more valuable than destroying one ship. He smiled. Besides, I have a better use for this vessel. What do you mean? Zexhai demanded. Marcus walked to the armory's main door and paused before leaving. I mean that in about 2 hours, this ship is going to arrive in the Sol system, carrying a very important diplomatic message. Your crew is going to deliver that message to Terran High Command, and then you're going to be escorted back to Krillian space to share what you've learned here today. He looked back at the assembled Krillians one last time. Consider this your one chance to be part of the solution, gentlemen. The alternative is to be part of the problem, and I promise you don't want to find out how humans solve problems they can't negotiate their way through. With that, Marcus Reed walked out of the armory, leaving behind a group of alien officers who were beginning to understand that their galaxy had just become a much more complicated place. The bridge of the domination hummed with nervous energy as the massive ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. What they found waiting for them made every Krillian aboard question everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. Arrayed before them in perfect formation were 60 warships that shouldn't have existed. The vessels were sleek, predatory-looking constructs that merged human engineering principles with technology that appeared decades ahead of anything in Krillian intelligence files. Each ship bristled with weapon systems that the domination sensors couldn't fully analyze, and their energy signatures suggested power plants operating on principles that Krillian science considered theoretical at best. By the ancestors, Vesh whispered, staring at the tactical display. Those ships are outputting more power than our entire battle fleet combined. Captain Zexhai stood frozen at the center of his bridge, watching as the human fleet arranged itself around his vessel with mechanical precision. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated that humans had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Your intelligence reports, came Marcus Reed's voice from behind them, indicated exactly what we wanted them to indicate. The Krillian officers turned to see Marcus walking onto their bridge, no longer wearing the simple clothes he had been captured in. Instead, he was dressed in what was clearly a formal, military uniform of a design none of them recognized, black and silver with insignia that spoke of high rank and considerable authority. Commander, Reed, came a voice from the main communication system. This is Admiral Chen aboard the TFS Prometheus. Status report. Marcus moved to the communications console as if he owned it. Mission accomplished, Admiral. Package delivered, intelligence gathered, and diplomatic contact established. The Krillian officers are ready to receive our message. Understood, Commander. Patching you through to diplomatic channels. Earth Central is standing by. The main view screen shifted to show not the human fleet outside, but what appeared to be a government chamber somewhere on Earth. The room was filled with humans in formal attire, but what struck Zexhai was the casual confidence they displayed. These weren't the representatives of a primitive species pleading for mercy. These were people who knew they held all the cards. A woman stepped forward, her bearing clearly indicating high political authority. Captain Zexhai of the Krillian Empire, I am President Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation. We need to talk. Zexhai found his voice with difficulty. President Chen, we were not aware that humanity had achieved this level of technological advancement. That was intentional, Captain. For the past 30 years, the Terran Federation has followed a policy of strategic deception regarding our true capabilities. We allowed the galactic community to believe we were a minor species confined to a few primitive colonies, while we prepared for the day when we would need to defend ourselves. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the view screen split to show multiple images: Krillian military installations, government buildings, and fleet formations. But something was wrong with all of them. Systems were failing, ships were dead in space, and facilities that should have been heavily defended appeared to be completely inoperative. As of 30 minutes ago, President Chen continued, 47 covert operations teams simultaneously neutralized every major Krillian military installation in your empire. Your fleet is immobilized, your ground forces are without equipment, and your government facilities are operating on backup power only. Vesh stared at the images in horror. You attacked our entire civilization? No, Marcus interjected. We neutralized your military capacity. There's a difference. Your people are unharmed. Your cities are intact and your government is still functional. We simply removed your ability to threaten other species. President Chen nodded. Commander Reed is correct. This operation was designed to be bloodless but comprehensive. We have no interest in destroying the Krillian Empire. or harming your people unnecessarily, but we will not tolerate the continuation of your slave-gathering activities. Zexai felt the weight of galactic history shifting around him. What happens now? Now, Captain, you have a choice. The president's expression was serious but not unkind. You can return to your government and inform them that humanity is no longer content to be treated as prey. You can tell them that we are prepared to take our place as an equal species in the galactic community, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. And if our government refuses? Zexai asked. The president was quiet for a moment. Then you can also tell them what you witnessed here today. You can describe the fleet that surrounded your ship, the technology that immobilized your military, and the precision with which we executed a galaxy-wide operation. She paused. And you can ask them if they really want to find out what humans are capable of when we stop trying to solve problems diplomatically. Marcus stepped closer to the communication console. Captain, may I make a suggestion? Zexai nodded, not trusting his voice. Recommend to your government that they request formal diplomatic negotiations with the Terran Federation. We're prepared to establish proper treaties, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts with species who are willing to treat us as equals. Marcus's expression softened slightly. The Krillian Empire has always been known for its tactical intelligence and military efficiency. Those are qualities that humans respect. There's no reason why our species can't be allies instead of enemies. On the screen, President Chen consulted something off camera. Captain Zexai, we're prepared to provide your ship with safe passage back to Krillian space. You'll be escorted by one of our vessels to ensure your safe arrival. In addition, we're including a data package containing detailed proposals for formal diplomatic relations. However, she continued, her tone becoming more serious, this is a one-time offer. If Krillian vessels are detected in human space engaging in hostile activities after today, our response will be significantly less diplomatic. Zexai looked around his bridge at his crew, then at Marcus Reed, the human who had seemed like just another primitive captive 12 hours. Ego was now revealed as a representative of what was apparently one of the most advanced military forces in the Yi galaxy. Commander Reed, Zexai said finally. May I ask you a personal question? Of course, Captain. How many of your people did we actually kill in our raids over the past 3 years? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The humans you captured from the colonies were volunteers, Captain. Intelligence operatives who accepted the mission knowing they might die in alien fighting pits in order to gather information about your operations. His voice was carefully controlled. However, the families they left behind were told they died in industrial accidents or transport malfunctions. It was easier than explaining the truth. The bridge fell silent as the full implications of that statement sank in. The Krillian Empire hadn't been capturing random human civilians. They had been capturing trained intelligence agents who had volunteered to die horrible deaths in order to protect their species. My God, Vesh whispered. The entire operation was a setup. Not a setup, Marcus corrected. A sacrifice. Those people died so that when the time came to protect humanity, we would know exactly what we were fighting against and how to defeat it. He looked directly at Zexai. They died so that people like you could have a chance to choose peace instead of war. President Chen's voice cut through the silence. Captain, we need your decision. Will you carry our message to your government? Zexai straightened his shoulders and looked directly at the screen. Yes, President Chen, we will carry your message. And if I may, I believe my government will be very interested in discussing those diplomatic proposals. Excellent. Commander Reed will remain aboard your vessel until you reach Krillian space, at which point he'll transfer to our escort ship. The president paused. Captain, I hope this marks the beginning of a new chapter in Krillian human relations. As the communication ended and the human fleet began arranging itself into escort formation, Zexai found himself looking at his ship, his crew, and his assumptions about the galaxy in an entirely new light. Everything had changed in the space of a few hours, and he suspected that nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days into their journey back to Krillian space, Captain Zexai found himself in an unlikely situation, having dinner with the human who had single-handedly destroyed his understanding of the galaxy. Marcus Reed sat across from him in the Domination Senior Officers' Mess Hall, eating Krillian field rations as if they were a delicacy. I have to ask, Zexai said, watching Marcus examine a protein cube with scientific interest. Were you really going to destroy this ship if we hadn't agreed to your terms? Marcus looked up from his meal. That's a difficult question to answer, Captain. The explosives were real and fully functional. I was prepared to use them if necessary, but I hoped it wouldn't come to that. Why? Vesh asked from his position at the table. The Sorok had been unusually quiet during the journey, clearly struggling to process everything that had happened. You could have eliminated a ship full of enemies and sent a clear message to our empire. Because, Marcus said, setting down his utensil, dead enemies can't become allies. And ultimately, that's what humanity needs. Not more dead aliens, but more living partners in this galaxy. Zexai leaned back in his chair. Is that why you volunteered for this mission? To make friends. I volunteered for this mission because I have a daughter. The simple statement seemed to surprise the Krillian officers. Marcus smiled at their expressions. You seem shocked that humans form family attachments. Not shocked, Zexai said carefully. But we were told that humans were barely sentient, that they operated purely on instinct and aggression. Who told you that? Marcus asked. Vesh consulted a data pad. The information came from the Hegemony Council's xenobiology reports. They classified humans as a level 3 species, intelligent enough to use tools and form basic social structures, but lacking the cognitive capacity for complex reasoning or emotional depth. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression becoming thoughtful. The Hegemony Council. I should have known. He looked up at the two officers. Tell me, when did your first contact with humanity occur? About 5 years ago, Zexai replied. A Krillian exploration vessel encountered a human transport ship in the neutral zone. The humans were struggling with engine failure and requested assistance. And you helped them? Of course. It's standard protocol to assist ships in distress. Zexai paused. The human crew was grateful for our help. They shared information about their colonies and trade routes. It seemed like a promising first contact. Marcus nodded slowly. And then the Hegemony Council told you that humans were primitive and suitable for exploitation. The Council has thousands of years of experience with first contact situations, Vesh said defensively. Their expertise in evaluating species has been invaluable to galactic civilization. Their expertise, Marcus said grimly, consists of identifying species that can be exploited without triggering larger conflicts. He pulled out a small device and activated a holographic display. Let me show you something. The display showed a star map with various species territories marked in different colors. This is the galactic political situation as it stood 30 years ago. He manipulated the controls and the map changed. This is the situation today. Notice anything? Zexai studied the display carefully. The Hegemony Council's territory has expanded significantly by exactly those areas, previously occupied by species that the Council classified as primitive and suitable for exploitation. Marcus deactivated the display. The Council doesn't make scientific classifications, gentlemen. They make target lists. The implications of what Marcus was suggesting began to sink in for the Krillian officers. You're saying that the Council manipulated us into attacking human settlements? Vesh asked. I'm saying that the Council has a pattern of encouraging aggressive species to attack weaker ones, then moving in to mediate the conflicts and absorb the territories of both sides. Marcus leaned forward. The question is, what were you promised in exchange for clearing humans out of the Outer Rim territories? Zexai felt his stomach drop. Mining rights. The Council promised extensive mining rights in the sectors we cleared of human presence. Rights that would have been administered by the Council, taking a percentage of all extracted resources. Yes, but that's standard. Zexai stopped mid-sentence as the full scope of the manipulation became clear. Marcus nodded. The Krillian Empire was being used, Captain. You were pointed at humanity like a weapon, told we were primitive and defenseless, and promised rewards that would have made you economically dependent on the very organization that sent you to attack us. But why target humans specifically? Vesh asked. There are hundreds of species in the galaxy. Why focus on us? Marcus's expression became more serious. Because humanity represents something the Council can't control, a species that developed advanced technology without joining their power structure. We've been watching the galactic political situation for decades, and we've seen what happens to species that become too dependent on Council guidance. He activated his device again. showing images of various alien civilizations, the Altarian Republic, the Vegan Confederacy, the Procyon Alliance, all once independent species with their own cultures and governments. All now protectorates of the Hegemony Council, their resources managed by Council bureaucrats, their military forces integrated into Council fleets. You're suggesting that the Council is deliberately destabilizing the galaxy to expand their own power, Zexai said. I'm not suggesting it, Captain. I'm stating it as fact. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Vesh looked confused. What can we do? Even if what you're saying is true, the Council controls most of the galaxy's trade routes, communication networks and military resources. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since they had met him, it was a genuinely warm expression. That's where humanity comes in. We've been preparing for this situation for 3 decades. We didn't just develop advanced technology, we developed it independently, without Council influence or oversight. Which means? Zexai prompted. Which means that humanity can offer something no other species in the galaxy can: genuine independence from the Council's control structure. Marcus leaned back in his chair. We can provide technology, military support, and economic partnerships that don't come with strings attached. The mess hall fell silent as the 2 Krillian officers processed this information. Finally, Vesh spoke up. What would you want in return? Allies, Marcus said simply. Species who are willing to stand together against the Council's expansion and work toward a galaxy where independence doesn't mean isolation. Zexai looked at his second-in-command, then back at Marcus. You realize that what you're suggesting would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy? Yes, Marcus agreed. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. He stood up from the table. The Council has spent centuries convincing species that they need protection, guidance, and management. Humanity is prepared to prove that they don't. As Marcus left the mess hall, Zexai and Vesh sat in contemplative silence. Outside the viewports, the stars streamed past as the Domination continued its journey toward Krillian space, carrying not just diplomatic messages but the seeds of what might become a galactic revolution. Vesh? Zexai said quietly. Yes, Captain? When we reach home, we're going to need to have some very serious conversations with our government about the diplomatic negotiations. Zexai looked out at the stars, about choosing sides. The Domination dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Krillian home system to find a galaxy that had fundamentally changed in their absence. The massive fleet that should have been guarding the approaches to Nexus Prime was visible only as dark hulks drifting in space, their weapon systems offline and their crews working frantically to restore basic life support. By the ancestors, Vesh whispered, staring at the tactical display. They really did it. They neutralized our entire military infrastructure. Captain Zexai stood at the center of his bridge, watching as their escort vessel, the sleek human ship that had accompanied them from Sol system, maintained a respectful distance while broadcasting diplomatic credentials to the crippled Krillian fleet. The human ship's captain had been courteous but firm during the journey. They were there to ensure safe passage, not to threaten or intimidate. Captain, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Command on Nexus Prime. On screen, Zexai ordered. The viewscreen activated to show Admiral Thexvor, but the proud military leader who had ordered them to kill Marcus Reed was gone. In his place was a being who looked like he had aged years in the past week. Behind him, the familiar command center of Krillian fleet operations was lit only by emergency lighting. Captain Zexai, the Admiral said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Report your status immediately. We have been experiencing difficulties. I can see that, Admiral. We are returning from the Sol system with important diplomatic communications from the Terran Federation. Admiral Thexvor's expression shifted to something approaching panic. The Sol system? You took a Krillian battlecruiser into human space? Are you insane? No, Admiral. I'm delivering a message that might save our empire. Zexai looked toward Marcus Reed, who had quietly entered the bridge to observe the conversation. Permission to come aboard and brief you in person? Granted. But Captain, the Admiral paused, looking older than his years. Bring whoever is responsible for what happened to our fleet. The Emperor wants answers, and I'm afraid we're running out of time to provide them. 30 minutes later, HFY Vesh and Marcus Reed materialized on the transport pad of Nexus Prime's primary military complex. The base that should have been bustling with activity was eerily quiet, lit by emergency power and staffed by skeleton crews struggling to maintain basic operations. Admiral Thexfor was waiting for them with a full escort of Imperial guards. Though the weapons they carried were clearly non-functional, Marcus noted with professional interest that the humans had been very thorough in their neutralization of Krillian military equipment. "So," the Admiral said, looking directly at Marcus, "you are the enhanced human who single-handedly crippled the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy." "I am Commander Marcus Reed of Terran Special Forces," Marcus replied formally. "And I didn't cripple your military, Admiral. My colleagues and I simply removed its ability to threaten civilian populations. The distinction seems academic when our entire fleet is dead in space," Admiral Thexfor said grimly. "Actually, Admiral, that's not quite accurate." Marcus pulled out a small device and activated it. Immediately, systems throughout the military complex began powering up. Lights returned to normal levels, computer terminals activated, and the hum of full life support systems filled the air. "Your fleet isn't dead. It's temporarily disabled. The question is whether it stays that way or not." The Admiral stared in amazement as his command center returned to full functionality. "How is this possible? Human technology operates on different principles than yours, Admiral. We didn't destroy your systems. We inserted control protocols that can be activated or deactivated as needed." Marcus's expression was serious. "Consider it a demonstration of good faith. We could have permanently crippled your military, but we chose not to." "What do you want?" the Admiral asked. "We want to deliver a message from our government," HFY interjected, "one that could change the relationship between our species permanently." Over the next hour, Marcus and Captain HFY presented the Terran Federation's proposal to a hastily assembled council of Krillian military and political leaders. The message was comprehensive: formal diplomatic recognition, mutual defense agreements, technology sharing arrangements, and most importantly, a joint initiative to counter the Hegemony Council's manipulation of galactic politics. "You're asking us to choose sides in a conflict that could tear the galaxy apart," said Chancellor Korthovan, the Emperor's senior political advisor. "No, Chancellor," Marcus replied. "We're asking you to choose independence over subjugation. The Hegemony Council has been using your empire as a tool to destabilize regions they want to control. The evidence is overwhelming." He activated his device again, displaying the same information he had shown HFY during their journey: trade agreements, territorial concessions, economic dependencies, all carefully crafted to gradually reduce Krillian sovereignty while increasing council influence. "Even if this is true," the Chancellor said, "what guarantee do we have that humanity won't simply replace the Council as the dominant power in the galaxy?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the presentation began, it reached his eyes. "Because that's not how humans work, Chancellor. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to live in it safely." He paused. "The difference between humanity and the Council is simple. We offer partnerships, not protectorates." Admiral Thexfor leaned forward. "What about our military capabilities? You've demonstrated that you can disable our fleet at will. How do we know you won't use that ability against us if we disagree with your policies?" "Because," Marcus said, walking to the control console and entering a series of commands, "we're giving you the countermeasures." The screens around the room displayed detailed technical specifications. "These are the protocols for detecting and neutralizing the control systems we installed in your equipment. Once you implement these countermeasures, your military will be secure against human technological interference." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "You're voluntarily giving up your ability to control our military?" the Chancellor asked. "We're proving that we meant what we said about partnerships," Marcus replied. "Trust has to start somewhere." 3 hours later, as the formal negotiations continued in the council chambers, Marcus found himself alone on an observation deck overlooking the sprawling city of Nexus Prime. The capital of the Krillian Empire stretched to the horizon. Millions of beings going about their lives unaware that their government was making decisions that would shape the galaxy's future. Captain HFY joined him at the viewing window. "It's a beautiful city," Marcus observed. "It is," HFY agreed. "My family lives here. My children attend the academies down there." He paused. When this started, I thought I was protecting them by serving in the fleet, keeping potential threats far from our world. You were protecting them, Marcus said. The problem was that you were told the wrong things were threats. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as night fell over Nexus Prime. Commander Reed, Zexai said finally. May I ask what happens now? Marcus smiled. Now, Captain, we find out if two very different species can learn to trust each other enough to build something better than what came before. He turned from the window. In my experience, that's the only kind of problem worth solving. As they walked back toward the council chambers, where the future of galactic civilization was being negotiated one careful agreement at a time, Marcus reflected on how different this mission had turned out compared to what he had expected when he volunteered to be captured by alien slavers. Sometimes, he thought, the best solutions were the ones you never saw coming. 6 months later, the first joint Terran-Krillian patrol ships would begin operations in the neutral zones, protecting trade routes and colony worlds from raiders operating under Council authorization. A year after that, 12 additional species would join what became known as the Independence Alliance, choosing partnership over protectorate status. And on a small colony world at the edge of human space, a little girl would receive a letter from her father explaining why he had been gone so long, and why the galaxy was now a safer place for children of all species to grow up in. But that, as they say, is another story.